Here's something I didn't figure out until embarrassingly late in life. The ends of the vegetables you're about to throw away are, more often than not, still alive. Not spoiled. Not finished. Just waiting. I found this out by accident. Years ago, when I got lazy about composting and left the root end of a green onion sitting in a glass of water on my windowsill instead of tossing it in the bin, 3 days later, it had grown an inch. I hadn't done anything except forget about it. That one glass of water changed how I look at my kitchen scraps entirely. Because it turns out, a good chunk of what most of us throw away every single week, the nub of a potato, the leafy crown of a beet, a clove of garlic that started to sprout in the pantry still has enough life left in it to grow into something new. No seed packet required. No trip to the store. Just a scrap you were going to throw out anyway. And a little patience, I should say up front. Since I don't want to oversell this, regrowing kitchen scraps isn't going to replace your weekly grocery run. Some of these projects give you back a genuine second harvest of the same vegetable. Others give you something a little different. A bonus crop of greens rather than a full root. Both are worth doing. But knowing which is which going in will save you some disappointment down the line. Today, I want to walk you through 9 of them. Some regrow in nothing but a glass of water on your counter. Others want soil from the start. A few will surprise you with how fast they take off. And 1 or 2 will test your patience a little. But every single one of them turns something you'd normally scrape into the trash into a second harvest. For the cost of absolutely nothing. Let's get into it. Green onions. I'll start here because it's the easiest one on this list. And it's usually where people fall in love with the whole idea. When you're using green onions in the kitchen, don't throw out that pale root end at the bottom. The part with the little white hairs still attached. That's the piece you want. Leave about an inch of the white stalk attached to the roots. And set it in a small glass with just enough water to cover the roots without submerging the cut top. Set it on a windowsill that gets decent light. And within 2 or 3 days, you'll start to see new green growth pushing up from the center. It's fast enough that it almost feels like cheating. Change the water every couple of days so it doesn't get cloudy or start to smell. And you can snip the green tops for cooking again and again over the following weeks. The same plant regrowing after each harvest. Here's the tip that took me a while to learn eventually. The water-grown roots will start to weaken if you keep this going indefinitely. If you want a scallion that keeps producing for months instead of weeks, transplant it into a small pot of soil once you see new roots forming. And it'll settle in and keep growing far longer than it ever would, sitting in a glass. One more thing worth knowing. Since it trips people up, not every green onion regrows equally well. The ones sold with the roots still fully intact and pale, rather than trimmed down close to the white stalk, tend to bounce back faster and more reliably. If you've got a choice at the store between a bunch with long, healthy roots and one trimmed close, it's worth grabbing the one with more root left to work with, especially if this is your first time trying it. Garlic. Garlic is a strange one, because most of us have already grown it by accident without meaning to. You know the clove that sits at the back of the pantry a little too long and sends up a green shoot? That's not garlic going bad. That's garlic trying to grow. Take that sprouted clove, or really any firm, healthy clove with the papery skin still intact, and you're already halfway there. Unlike green onions, garlic wants soil from the start, not water. Plant the clove pointed end up, root end down, about 2 inches deep, in a pot with well-draining soil or straight into a garden bed if you've got a sunny spot available. Within 1 to 2 weeks, you'll see a green shoot break the surface, and from there, it just keeps climbing. This is where patience becomes part of the deal. Garlic isn't a quick regrow like green onions. You're looking at a genuine growing season, often 6 to 8 months, before you get an actual bulb worth harvesting underground. Some people don't wait that long and just keep clipping the green garlic scapes for a mild garlic flavor in cooking, which is a perfectly good use of the plant on its own. The tip here is about timing garlic planted in fall, ahead of winter. Tends to produce larger bulbs than garlic planted in spring, because it gets a long, slow head start before the growing season really kicks in. It's also worth mentioning that not every garlic clove from the grocery store is a great candidate. A lot of commercially sold garlic is treated to prevent sprouting, which works against you here. If a clove has already started sprouting on its own in your pantry, that's actually a good sign, since it means whatever treatment was applied has worn off or was never used in the first place. Ginger surprises people, mostly because it doesn't look like it's going to do anything for what feels like a long time. Look for a piece of ginger root with a few visible eyes. Those small bumps or nubs where new growth will eventually emerge, the same kind of thing you'd look for on a sprouting potato. A piece about an inch or two long, with at least one or two of those eyes, is enough to start. If you can find ginger that's already got a little green nub poking out, even better. That's a head start already in motion. Ginger wants soil, and it wants some patience along with it. Plant the piece just below the surface, eyes facing up, in a wide, shallow pot rather than a deep one. Since ginger spreads horizontally more than it grows down, keep the soil consistently moist but not soaked, and place it somewhere warm with indirect light rather than harsh, direct sun. Sprouting can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes longer, if your kitchen or growing space runs cool. So don't panic if nothing seems to be happening at first. Once it does sprout, it's a slow, steady grower, and you're generally looking at 4 to 8 months before there's enough of a root mass underground to actually harvest and use. The tip that makes the biggest difference with ginger is warmth. It's a tropical plant at heart, and it simply won't sprout with any real enthusiasm in a cold room. So if your house runs chilly, a spot near a heat vent or a warm windowsill will speed things up considerably. Potatoes. Potatoes are probably the vegetable most of us have already regrown without trying. Usually because we forgot one in the bottom of a cabinet for too long. Look for a potato with several eyes. Those small indentations that eventually sprout, especially any that already show a bit of purplish or white growth starting. Cut the potato into chunks, each one containing at least 1 or 2 healthy eyes, and let the cut pieces sit out for a day or two so the surfaces callus over slightly. Skipping that step isn't the end of the world, but it does make the pieces more prone to rotting once they're in the ground. Plant the pieces about 3 to 4 inches deep. Cut side down, eye side up, in loose soil that drains well. Potatoes genuinely don't love heavy, compacted soil. So if what you've got is dense clay, working in some compost first will make a real difference. Sprouts typically show up above the soil within 2 to 3 weeks. From there, it's a matter of mounding soil up around the growing stems every few weeks as they get taller. A process called hilling, which encourages the plant to produce more potatoes along the buried stem rather than just at the base. Harvest time depends on the variety, but you're generally looking at 10 to 20 weeks from planting to a full harvest. The tip worth remembering: don't rush the harvest. The longer you leave potatoes in the ground, once the plant starts to yellow and die back, within reason, the thicker the skin gets, which means better storage life once you dig them up. And one caution that's worth passing along: skip any potato that's gone soft, wrinkled, or that's showing green patches on the skin. That green tint means the potato has been exposed to too much light and has started producing a compound that isn't something you want concentrating in a plant you're growing for food. A firm potato with healthy eyes is what you're after, not one that's been sitting in a sunny spot on the counter for a month. Woo! Sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are a different animal from regular potatoes. And honestly, this one might be the most fun to watch. Take a firm, healthy sweet potato. Ideally one that's already showing a few small sprouts. And suspend it, half submerged in a jar of water using toothpicks pressed into the sides to hold it in place. Pointed end down. Keep it somewhere warm and reasonably bright. And refresh the water every few days. Within 2 to 4 weeks, you'll start to see roots forming underwater and small leafy shoots called slips sprouting from the top half. This is genuinely satisfying to watch happen in real time. In a way, most root vegetables on this list don't offer. Once those slips reach about 4 to 6 inches long, twist them gently off the main sweet potato and place them in a separate glass of water until they grow their own roots, which usually takes another week or so. From there, each slip gets planted into soil, about a foot apart if you're growing more than one, in loose, well-draining soil with plenty of sun. The vines will spread out across the ground. And underneath, that's where the new sweet potatoes are forming. Generally ready to harvest around 90 to 120 days after planting the slips. The tip that matters most here is warmth and patience during that early sprouting phase. Sweet potatoes are slow to get going, compared to a lot of what's on this list. And a cool kitchen will stall the process considerably. So a warm spot really does speed things along. Look. Beets. Now, I want to be honest about something with beets, because it changes what you're actually growing back. If you slice the top inch or so off a beet, the part where the leaves would have attached, and set that piece in a shallow dish of water, cut side down, you won't regrow a full new beetroot. What you'll get instead is a fresh crop of beet greens, which happen to be genuinely delicious, sautéed or added to soups. And that's a worthwhile harvest in its own right, even if it's not quite what people picture when they hear regrow a beet. Keep the water shallow, just enough to touch the base of the beet top without submerging the whole thing, and change it every couple of days to keep it fresh. Within about a week, you'll see small green leaves starting to emerge from the center. If you'd rather grow an actual new beetroot from scratch, that requires starting from seed rather than a scrap, which is a different project entirely. But worth mentioning, so you're not disappointed expecting a full root to regrow from a kitchen scrap the way a potato or ginger will do. See. The tip here, once those greens get a couple of inches tall, you can transplant the beet top into a small pot of soil, and it'll continue producing greens for weeks longer than it would sitting in water alone. Since the roots have more room to keep drawing up nutrients. See. Carrots. Carrots follow almost the same logic as beets. And it's worth clearing up the confusion here too, because this is one of the most commonly misunderstood regrowing projects out there. Slice off the top inch of a carrot, the crown where the green stem would have connected, and set it in a shallow dish, with the cut side down in water. Within about a week, you'll see feathery green fronds sprouting from the top, which look a bit like dill and make a decent garnish or addition to a salad. What you won't get is a new orange carrot root growing back underneath. The original root is done contributing to a new carrot at that point. What you're growing is essentially carrot foliage, using the stored energy left in that top slice. It's a fun little kitchen project and genuinely useful if you want the greens, but it's not going to replace a trip to the grocery store for actual carrots. Keep the water shallow and fresh, refreshing it every 2 to 3 days. And place the dish somewhere with decent natural light. Once the fronds are a couple of inches tall, you can transplant the crown into soil if you want the greens to keep growing longer. The same way you would with beet tops. The tip that saves people disappointment here is simply knowing what to expect going in. Treat it as a greens project, not a root project. And you'll enjoy it a lot more. Turnips. Turnips work almost identically to beets and carrots, which makes this section quick. But it's worth including because turnip greens are one of the more underrated regrowing payoffs on this whole list. Cut the top inch or so off a turnip, right where the leaves would naturally attach, and set that piece cut side down in a shallow dish with just enough water to cover the base. Within a week to 10 days, you'll see fresh green shoots emerging from the center. And turnip greens have a peppery, slightly mustardy flavor that holds up well in a skillet with a little garlic and olive oil. As with beets and carrots, you're regrowing greens here, not a new turnip root. So go in with that expectation. Change the water regularly to keep it from getting murky. And give the dish a spot with good light. Once the greens are established, moving the turnip top into a pot of soil extends how long it keeps producing. Sometimes for a month or more. Compared to just a couple of weeks, sitting in water alone, the tip worth knowing: turnip tops regrow fastest and stay healthiest when the original piece still has a decent amount of the root attached, not just a thin sliver. So don't cut it too close when you're prepping the turnip for cooking. Radishes. I've saved radishes for last. Partly because they're fast, and partly because they wrap up this list on a satisfying note. Slice the top of a radish, keeping a small bit of the actual root attached rather than cutting flush against the greens. And set it cut side down in a shallow dish of water. Radishes are quick. Some of the quickest on this entire list. And you'll often see new green growth within just 3 or 4 days, like beets, carrots, and turnips. What regrows here is greens rather than a new radish bulb. And radish greens have a sharp, slightly spicy bite that works well, tossed into a stir-fry or blended into a pesto if you want to use them for something beyond a simple garnish. Keep the water shallow and fresh. And once the greens are a couple of inches tall, the same rule applies as with the others. On this list, transplanting into soil extends the harvest window considerably longer than leaving it in water indefinitely. The tip here is really about expectations. Same as with the other greens-only regrows on this list. If you actually want a new radish root to eat, from seed to harvest takes only about 3 to 4 weeks, which is fast enough that at what he's often worth. Just planting fresh radish seeds alongside your kitchen scrap projects. So you get both the quick greens now and a real root harvest not far behind. So there you have it. 9 vegetables. All of them started from something that most kitchens throw away without a second thought. Some of these, the green onions, the garlic, the ginger, the potatoes. The sweet potatoes will genuinely give you back a full harvest. The same vegetable you started with, grown fresh from a scrap that cost you nothing. The others, the beets, carrots, turnips, and radishes, hand you something a little different, a crop of fresh greens. Generous enough to make the project worthwhile, even though it's not quite the vegetable you started with. Either way, I think there's something worth sitting with here beyond the practical value. So much of what ends up in the trash from a kitchen still has some life left in it. If you're willing to give it a windowsill and a little patience, it's a small habit, and it won't replace your grocery bill entirely, but it adds up more than people expect. And it's a genuinely satisfying thing to watch happen on your own counter. I'd also say this: it's a good project to start small with. Pick 1 or 2 from this list, not all 9 at once, and get a feel for how they behave in your own kitchen before you turn your whole windowsill into a science experiment. Light, temperature, and even the water in your area can all nudge the timing a little differently than what I've described here. And that's normal. Half the fun is watching your own results unfold at their own pace. If you try even one of these, I'd love to know how it goes. Drop a comment and tell me which one you're starting with. And if you've already had luck regrowing something I didn't cover here, share that too. I read every one of them. If this was useful, hit subscribe. I've got more low-cost, low-effort gardening ideas coming soon, built for exactly this kind of small, satisfying win in your own kitchen. Welcome home to Easy Garden. I'll see you in the next one.